my CB handle is Long Haul Paul, and I adopted that as sort of a performance name because there was a DJ out of North Carolina who was playing one of my songs, and he couldn't pronounce my last name, and he got really frustrated over the air. And I thought, yeah, you know, nobody's going to remember Marhoefer, but they will remember Long Haul Paul.
Yeah, I mean it's got a good ring to it, that's for sure. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I'm curious, I guess, before we get into the music part of things, how long have you been in trucking?
Well, I started trucking full time in 1979 for a small food distribution company, and but I was only a local guy. And then in '87, I went full time over the road. And my years from '79 to '87 were off and on years. I was going back to college, trying to finish college, and going back and forth to the truck, and I was just a little six wheeler. So I have to. I had some sum of wheel shame back then. When I would go to the truck stops, I would park way in the back and walk up to the restaurant in a circuitous manner so nobody could connect me with the truck, and because I didn't want to be called out as somebody saying, "Hey, aren't you in that six wheeler?" Because that literally happened to a friend of mine back in the day.
What was it about trucking that drew you in?
Well, my father had trucks, and I was a pump boy. My father and his father had a large meat packing company, and my first job at the age of 14, other than being a paper boy, was what I would ride my bicycle 5 miles on my summer job, and I was the guy who would put fuel in the trucks and park them. And my dad's drivers were all Teamsters, and that wasn't part of their job. You had so I that and I sort of loved being around that culture because we had the Teamsters, and none of these guys were job scared. They would speak their mind, and that sort of resonated to my rebellious teenage nature. And then my dad at the time was buying Colorado box beef from a company called Montford, and those drivers, they were a different type of driver. Back then they were impeccably dressed, and they looked like they just walked off the set of a Western. And sometimes they would tip me, and my job was to wash out their trucks because they would unload, and their trucks would still have to be washed out before they could reload. And I just sort of fell in love with that, maybe that zeitgeist, that mindset, and much to the chagrin of my parents, who wanted me to be some sort of professional. My siblings are like teachers. One's a lawyer. One's a language interpreter internationally, and then it was sort of difficult for my parents for me to become a truck driver.
Now the music part of things, when did you first get into music and start singing?
Well, I grew up with the love of words. My father used to read us Robert's Service out loud, the great bard of the Yukon, and and my father had two main loves: Studs Terkel and Robert's Service. And Studs Terkel was a great oral historian from Chicago who had books like Working and The Great War and Hard Times, where he would interview survivors of the Depression, people who went through World War II, how people felt about their jobs. And I really loved those two entities. And Robert Service was a great gold prospector up in the Yukon Territory who wrote these gritty poems about different prospectors he had met up there. And those two loves informed my writing. And I actually began writing seriously in 1981, and all my songs then were gospel songs. and I was attending a church that had a very progressive music program, and I kind of blossomed as a songwriter under their tutelage. But they did not allow what they called secular songs. They were very strict about that. And one day, one of the deacons of the church invited. I had my own apartment by the time I was 19. Was doing my trucking thing, and one of the deacons of the church was like really frowning on my album collection. I had all these blues albums, pretty extensive chess collection, and I could, like, they didn't allow that, and then I was very young and impressionable. I wouldn't do that today, but I got rid of my records, and at that point I began writing songs. I was almost like to replace the songs I had lost in a sense, and maybe that was necessary then, though I don't know. But then when my father-in-law died, we were very close. I committed this act of rebellion. I wrote a song about something that had happened to me, and not just an abstract religious concept. And that rebellion continues to this day.
Now, you've obviously gotten into writing a lot of songs about trucking. You recently came out with a new one. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, and thanks for having me here to talk about that. 4 Million Miles Deep was a result of a conversation I had with a driver who had just was on his way back from Vanderbilt in Nashville, and had just gotten word that he was given 6 months to live. And I was on the phone with him while he was processing this, and there's just something about that stage 4 clarity, and I thought, man, this needs to be curated and in a song form. And so that's how a lot of my songs I write just out of some cathartic need to, for something difficult that I've seen out here on the road.
And your most recent song, when you posted it, I saw some of the comments, which were amazing. One of them, I think I wrote down, somebody said, I feel every word of this song. How does that feel to get the kind of comments like that?
Well, I'll tell you, Ashley, my wife Denise is here with me, and it really does, it means a lot. And because I'm still out here pushing a truck down the road, and we're living in this age of the great democratization of sound, where truck drivers are putting out albums. Sometimes their songs get it on the radio, and 20 years ago this never would have happened. Somebody with money would have had to have gambled money on putting a record out on me, and frankly, I fell out of the cosmetic presentability tree maybe 3 million miles ago. No record company would ever have bet on me. I don't think. But so those are the small discoveries that we rely on. Sometimes we've had deep and meaningful friendships with people. Like, for example, the folks that sponsored this video, MD Alignment and S&B Transportation out of South Dakota. Now, in no other world could you connect with somebody from South Dakota who says, "Hey, I want to help you do this." But that's what the digital age has done. So this is probably always going to be a small cult following, but and we don't even like to say fans. We like to say friends, because fans almost seems like a positional one-upment, like a one-upmanship. But we have wonderful friends who, and we don't expect these things to be mass consumed, but every now and then somebody comes along and really gets it.
What is the process like when you go from writing the song to recording it and shooting the video? What is that process like?
Well, I've fallen into this this process where I record the song as a solo acoustic track. It's just me and the guitar, And then we listen to it for a while and we say, what does it need? And we might send it around. Some of our songs from this album got passed around in Austin, Texas. Gurf Molex put a bass part on one of them, for example. And in this case, we thought, how about a dobro, you know? But that was a deliberate process, which over the course of months, because, you know, I only have so much time to jump out of the truck and go to the studio. And so we have a wonderful dobro player who lives nearby. And there's a lot of talent right around here. I almost think there's talent everywhere. And if you give it a template and if you give it a space, Eric Hofer was the great longshoreman philosopher. And he made this comment that he spent the Depression on Skid Row. And when he came out of the Depression as a longshoreman, he said, Skid Row is lousy with talent. I mean, there's all kinds of talent everywhere. So we put Marty Price on the dobro, and then Jeff Templeton put a bass part on. But what we have to have first is a good standalone solo acoustic signal. Pardon me. Good solo acoustic track. And then we, what was I trying to say? I don't remember. But we build off of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, in the video, which was beautifully shot, by the way, you're in front of a Freightliner. Is there any story behind that?
Oh, yeah. Tim Raby very graciously allowed us to use his Freightliner. He bought this Freightliner and completely restored it. And it's a cool truck. And he thought he might go ahead and own or operate that. And he's a coworker where I work at Moeller Trucking. And, you know, then the rates kind of got a little squirrely. So he's just got that as a kind of a working show truck right now. Yeah. And I used to drive a truck a lot like that. And I do think that the visuals were so great. We were so fortunate to have a gentleman named James Year, who was a graduate of Syracuse University, come and shoot that. And he's got a real advocate's heart in the trucking world. His master's was chronicling the culture of trucking and what he feels could be in its final. I hope not, but you know, he wanted to chronicle the culture of trucking before it was AI'd out of existence. And so I'm glad he shot that video, and I'm glad he did his project, but I hope it will be longer than he thinks for this industry.
What do you hope people feel when they listen to the song and watch the video?
Well, the premise of that question is difficult for me, and here's why. I do subscribe to the Rick Rubin notion that the audience comes last. And what I mean by that is, and I hope I don't sound disrespectful by saying this, but I mean, the song meant a lot to me, and I hope that it might mean something to somebody else, and it means a lot if it does. But I was satisfied with the song. This album could be a commercial flop. What do you think, Denise?
It's one of my favorites.
It was an album I just needed to do because I was in a kind of a near-death experience where I got hit by a runaway set of duels, and like my truck went out of control, and I was so close. It threw me into oncoming traffic, and I was so close to these cars that were coming at me from the westbound lane. I literally like flinched like this, like you would like you're about ready to get hit by a baseball, and nobody was even scratched, and we didn't even lose a single case of yogurt. And so I wound up spending Christmas Eve at the North Platte Comfort Inn, and I was sort of in this really quiet space, just contemplating what all this meant. And I felt like I needed to do a gospel album. And this was maybe the trucker twist to that gospel album.
We can expect more music from you in the future.
Yes, I have several albums of songs. I'm in this race now, Ashley, with the Grim Reaper. I've got songs that I want to get out that I've already written. Some of them have been written for years, and it's just a matter of getting to the studio. And we have so many wonderful sponsors that helped us put out this album, because on just a company driver's wages, which I'm a former owner operator, and I'm just a company driver now, but and a lifetime OOIDA member as well. But without the help of our sponsors, folks like Bolsnot Family of Products, MD Alignment, folks like DPF Regeneration, Lick Skillet Auction, Circle C Truck and Equipment. I mean, these are people that all stepped up and kept me out of the poorhouse. And so it can, I tell you, making albums, it's just like anything. Say you do tractor pulls or race stock cars. It can make a poor man out of you quick if you let it get the best of you. So every now and then we have one that people listen to, and we sell a few, and we live to fight another day.
If anyone listening or watching wants to find you online, how can they do that?
I just go to Long Haul Paul Music, and they'll find us. And yeah, and we do some shows. We've got a few shows booked. We're gonna be going to back to Wheel Jam in South Dakota. This is it June, Denise?
Mm-hmm.
This June, we're going to be doing a celebration of life for Scott Marone, who was the founder of that show. And I don't, my touring schedule is pretty sparse. It's limited to truck shows. I wish I could play the cool clubs that all the Americana people play, but you can't go to a bar with 40 seats in Moncton and say, yeah, you're going to have to replace my driver's wages for a week. You just can't sell that much beer. Maybe in Moncton you can sell that much beer.
All right. Is there anything else you want to mention that I may have missed?
Ashley, I just want to thank the Bolsnot Family of Products, Moeller Trucking, Circle C Truck and Equipment, Ben Center Trucking, Lick Skillet Equipment Auction, S&B Transportation, and then MD Alignment and DPF Regeneration. And they're the reason why I'm here as far as an artist. These are just all small to medium-sized businesses that, interestingly enough, approached me and said, how can I help? And that's never happened before. And that's really nice when they approach you.